Today, it's a privilege to be joined by Arun Iyengar, CEO of Untether AI. Arun's journey began by earning his engineering degree at Bangalore University, and then he launched into his career beginning with Altera, where he made a formidable impact on their communications business with innovative strategies. While at Altera, Arun steered the company from trailing behind competitors to becoming the market leader. And he also pursued his MBA from the esteemed Tepper College of Business at Carnegie Mellon. He then went on to have executive positions at AMD and Xilinx, and at both companies, he pioneered and directed strategic programs that not only reversed declines, but added billions in net revenue. Arun's business leadership at some of the semiconductor industry's largest corporations is complemented by his invaluable contributions to startups. For over a decade, he's been offering strategic guidance to aspiring founders and knows that breakthrough innovation is often the result of meticulous planning, relentless effort, and even a little bit of fortunate timing, which is why Arun is such a believer in perseverance, a quality he's brought to every team he's led and leads now at Untether AI. So I'm extremely excited to hear your perspective about AI and accelerated compute and how your experience is making an impact at Untether. So without further ado, welcome, Arun.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for hosting me in your podcast.
Absolutely. My favorite question to ask any leader within this field is, before you were CEO, what got you into engineering to begin with?
So my father's an engineer. My grandfather was an engineer. So when I was a little kid, that's what I wanted to be an engineer, because guess what? Everybody else was. So that was and as I got into the field, the innovation and really the ability to solve some difficult problems, right, is what's kept me into the not just the engineering field, but the high-tech portion of the engineering field, right? Because you can come up with things that can solve problems for, and the impact of that solution will be felt for generations to come. AI is a great example of where that is today.
Absolutely. And could you walk us through your career journey and highlight some pivotal decisions and relationships that have led you to your current role as CEO of Untether AI?
Yeah, career progression is unique and different, but all have similar characteristics, right? And the characteristics that you kind of want to look for, and what I was seeking was really understanding the business side of the equation quite well to complement my engineering background, but also getting a breadth of understanding from the business side and the engineering side. So, my goal was to kind of build a breadth of functional knowledge across various fields: marketing, sales, even the finance side, as well as IT and operations. So at some point, if I were to become a GM or a CEO, then I would know what to do, because you don't just land in these roles and learn on the job. You have to prepare to land into these roles and then execute with no hesitation, right? So with that, really what I was when I was an engineer, I liked the engineering part, but I kind of felt that I missed the business side of the equation. So I went and got the MBA that you alluded to, and then coming out of getting the MBA, I joined Altera, and that's when I moved into the marketing role. And within the marketing role, I did a variety of different activities, including things like business analysis and forecast, right, which is absolutely an important element for you to be able to evaluate down at the detail level what's going on with the business, right? And that's kind of how I had the vision of making sure that I gained breadth early in my career, so that when I got into the roles that were interesting to me, I could step into them without any concerns.
Awesome. The last couple of quarters, we've highlighted Untether AI as one of the companies within the AI, machine learning, and accelerated compute space that we're betting on. And you have been very intentional about your career decision. So obviously, this is a space, a sector that you believe strongly in. What led to you accepting the role as CEO of Untether AI, and why do you believe in it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, when I left, my last role was at Xilinx, and then I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I really wanted to get into a purpose-built, only AI-focused company, right? And that was because I think my view was that AI was going to dominate the world of semiconductors, and so having a pure play approach would be the right thing versus kind of take your existing product and AIize it, if that's a word. Would make it a little more challenging, and you'd end up with more of an inferior product than being able to really enable the market. Because what you need to do for the AI is really enable the market in a way that things can take off in the virtuous cycle approach. So as I was looking at possible companies, Untether really stood out for a few reasons, right? One of them was I was looking to get into a company that had an innovative technology that could be differentiated, but that could stay differentiated. It wasn't just a one-off differentiation, but it's a multi-generational differentiation. And the whole concept of at-memory compute really does provide that level of multi-generational differentiation. The second is scalability. Within that differentiated product, if there is an ability to create multiple products for any given type of an approach. So for example, our upcoming 7 nanometer product family, which we call Speed AI, it's an example of a family where we can have multiple individual products within that family that target different types of end applications. And that's the scalability I was talking about, because if you can't scale, and that's what processor companies and FPGA companies do really, really well, because they have one product family and a multiplicity of products within that family that can go after the a $20 part all the way to a $100,000 part, right? I mean,
Yeah.
depends on what you want to sell it for. And so having that scalability allows a company like ours to go invest into a technology where you spend a lot of money in that first investment, but for small incremental additional investments, you can come out with multiple products, which allows us to expand the market, by a factor of 3, maybe a factor of 10, right? So that's the value add of having that scalability. And then the third is, of course, really having a team that's really capable and dedicated to kind of do something innovative and industry changing. Because the whole concept of at-memory compute, which we could talk about a little bit later, really has never been utilized for AI, and so we were the pioneers in doing that. And so you kind of need people with that mindset that want to come in and do something pioneering and different from anything else they've ever done before. And so having a group of people and attracting and growing that group of people, right, was kind of my desire to join Untether.
Absolutely. Well, and you talked a lot about the AI space, and considering the rapidly evolving landscape of AI machine learning models, where do you see the most significant, fastest growing growth occurring within the AI machine learning sector in the next 12 to 18 months?
There's the public available knowledge, and then there is the things that happen behind the scenes, right? From a publicly facing AI, it's definitely the large language models, right? ChatGPT and everything else. Those are by far the largest mind share takers for the general public, and it's actually a really good thing, because that's the first time the general populace is introduced to AI where they can actually utilize it in a meaningful way because they're thinking it's AI. Now, there's a lot of things that happen that's AI, that's on your cell phone today, that's on your chatbots. There's a lot of AI type applications that are happening that are not necessarily public facing. And so from a true revenue generation, I think there's a lot of large language model opportunities that will drive a lot of short-term revenue. But over the next 12 to 18 months, I think you'll start seeing more of the enterprise embedded class AI. So these could be things like vision systems. This could be things like, the natural language processing systems, not just the large language model systems that will be driving the AI revenue.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because we hear phrases like AI workloads and LLMs fairly often now, and I think most people associate these with being confined in the data center, but there are countless transformative applications. You just named a few for AI at the edge, like truly autonomous driving. Untether can help customers unlock the potential of these AI technologies, but what are the other important considerations?
Well, okay, so AI is something that can be done for good, right? And should be done for good. And in doing so, you really have to think through the impact that it's going to have, right? So there are things like policy and ethics that, there are a lot of people that are way more qualified than me that are looking at and trying to drive, making sure that there's no bias, there's no, it doesn't give us a wrong direction, putting the right policies in place, et cetera. But to me, there's a area that not a lot of people put any focus on, and that's the energy concept of AI, right? So AI is supposed to be something that can help us solve some of the climate crises, but a really, little known fact is that AI can contribute quite rapidly if deployed in the wrong way. And what does that mean? Right? If you were to look at, the data center as a percent of the world's electricity, right? We're probably in the 1 to 1.5%. There are some estimates that bring it all the way up to 20%, but I think that 20% is more in the certain regions of the world. But in a global perspective, we're probably talking 1 to 1.5%, maybe up to 2% of the world's energy going to data centers. In the next 10 years, that expectation is that it's going to be almost 6 to 8%.
Wow.
I mean, that's humongous, right? I mean, obviously percentages don't matter when it's 1 to 2 or 2 to 3, but when you take the world's energy supply and you say that you're going to take out 4 to 6% of that world's energy supply and you're just going to give it to AI, right? Where's that going to come from? Are we now creating a world of haves versus have-nots, even for AI, which is absolutely the worst thing you could do?
Yeah.
Right? Are we doing the things that, the thing that AI is supposed to do is help humanity, right? Help us all have a much better quality of life.
Thank you.
Right? Are we now saying, well, okay, you can, but only if you live in this zip code, right? I mean, that type of, it's bias in a different way. It's biased by money, right? Biased by energy, right? And so it's an important thing for us to really poke into and make sure that the deployment of AI, which is the inference part of it, really needs to happen in a sustainable manner. And we don't end up having this energy crisis that's looming in front of us.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I continue to feature Untether AI as one of the companies that I'm betting on, because there is true passion. It's not just speak for the market's sake around the deployment of AI in a responsible way, and the democratization of AI is something that clearly is important to you. Is there a life event that has established that importance for you?
So I grew up in Bangalore, and it's so growing up, in a country that has a mingling, if you will, of people with money and people without money, right? And it's consistent, right? It's pretty easy to see well, maybe I was fortunate to be born into someone who was an engineer as a profession. And so, yes, I have maybe a little more, but that doesn't mean that I am someone that, okay, we're gonna have to skip this part, but it doesn't mean that I'm someone that is a person that expects it or should expect it, or I earned it, right? I earned it just by being born to it, right? So having a lot of friends that were not as well off and seeing them struggle in terms of even paying their school tuition, because you had to pay money even for elementary and middle schools and high schools there. and finding that they were actually getting jobs to even pay for their way through high school, right? That to me was a way of looking at it, going, okay, first, of course, I got to really think through what I want to do in life, and in the areas that I do choose, how do I now support more than less?
Absolutely. And can you talk a little bit to how Untether's approach to the business and to AI is supporting that?
Yeah, so there's a few things that we are looking at. From our hiring practices, of course, we kind of want to be very open, and we bring in a lot of the college students because we want to get them coming in, because most of the AI companies are saying, hey, I really want experienced people because that's how I can move this forward. We are actually doing a pretty good job in getting a lot of new college grads, and we get them in and we get them into various areas, and sometimes they stay in the area they joined us for, other times they're moving around, and that's kind of one of the breadth of experience that we want to provide. We do the same with a lot of the interns, right? We have a whole host of interns that we hire, and we make sure that we have representation, right, in terms of the people that we do hire, and that it's not just a certain class. So that's just internally. Now, how do we go externally? The products that we create are meant to make sure that energy efficiency is a first order design goal. Because we know, back to the democratization of AI, AI has to be deployed in a broad way for everybody to be able to enjoy it and take advantage of it. And that can only happen if we come up with a way to reduce the energy utilization for doing that same AI. So what we end up doing is we have a technique that allows us to be different from others, where for other architectures like the traditional von Neumann architecture, you end up with a lot of data movement penalty, right? So you got energy for moving the data from the DRAM to the cache inside the chip, and then from the cache onto the actual processing for the AI workload. And you would be surprised to hear that the actual processing of the AI workload is less than 10% of the energy that the chip consumes. Right now, you can easily see how problematic it is now that you take that 90% wasted energy, and with inference, what you're doing is, for the same workload, you're deploying it for user one, you're deploying it for user two, user three, and so every time there's a 90% wasted energy, 90% for the first person, 90% for the second person. And so you're just essentially, throwing a lot of electricity that was, hard-earned, or whatever you want to say, however it was generated, out to waste.
Yeah.
So what we did was we flipped that to say, let's throw away the penalty, and let's just put the energy for AI processing only. And so in doing that, we end up with a much more efficient approach. We then end up having the ability to, for the same power profile, because all servers are all created with certain power profiles. Nobody is going to say, okay, I'll just use a third of the power, or tenth of the power. But what we can do is, for the same power, now we can give them 5x, a 10x increase, or maybe even a 100x increase in terms of AI workload processing. That's how we look for the democratization, because now we can do a lot more, so that the ability for the whichever company it is to charge per user becomes a lot cheaper for them.
Yeah,
right? It's a lot cheaper. So that's how we're trying to democratize the whole AI for everybody concept.
Awesome. Can you share a little bit about the most exciting market response you've received to date?
So I'll talk about a market that's still an interesting one that has not a solution yet, but I think we're getting closer to a solution. And that's you talked about this, the autonomous vehicles. The autonomous vehicle market is still something that's relatively nascent. There's a lot of activity going on there. And what you'll see in that market is you need, and now I'm going to go a little more technical, you need a minimum of 10,000 TOPS, and a TOP is trillion operation per second. So 10,000 trillion operations per second of AI processing before you can actually do any level of autonomy. Okay. And of course, you need to do that in a very low power profile. So if you think about 10,000 TOPS, from a GPU, you're probably taking 6 to 8 of their highest end GPUs, each of them consuming 600 to 800 watts. Think of this, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to put a 5 kilowatt machine into a car, right? And so it's just not going to go anywhere, right? Now, from our product that's coming out, the Speed AI that I mentioned, we have each chip that's capable of doing 2,000 trillion operations per second. So you could put 5 of our chips into a car. Now it's not still at the lowest power and of where the car would like it to be, but we're still in the 400 to 500 watt range for that number of chips, right? So now all of a sudden, we're less than a tenth of the power for the same AI compute density. And so that's where we ended up getting a lot of really positive response from autonomous vehicle makers saying this is really, really interesting. Now, of course, it's still not enough that they can go to production, because I'll tell you that 500 watts really needs to come down to more like 100 watts before it can get there. But hey, 500 is a lot closer to 100 than 5,000 is.
Oh, absolutely. 90% there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a really cool application where we think, we see a lot of traction. There are other applications. This is a fascinating thing. If you think about, like video, your home security, right? And you got this long stream of video that, maybe you're on vacation, and so you have this long stream of nothing, right? And you're storing this long stream of nothing. And maybe if you're unlucky, somebody tries to break in, and that's where you capture that break in, and now you can actually do something with that. But you have gone through, I don't know, 50 hours, 60 hours of nothing before you can get to that something, right? So you've stored a bunch of white noise, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? And that same scenario applies in a variety of different places. So, as an example, you could have, let's say you're a government application, you have a drone that's going across, and it's seeing land as expected. It's seeing buildings as expected, and then it continues on, and you've got high like 4K type data coming through, right? Now, do you send it all by cellular technology while the drone's running? Do you store it all and then look at it when the drone comes back? Or do you do something in between, right? So the same concept comes again, where, okay, now I find something that I didn't expect, where, in all these trees, I'm seeing this metal glinting. Okay, now that's a problem. Maybe I should go dive down and look into that better. But how can that drone operator know that? Because, are you sending all the 4K signals through every time? In which case, the drone capacity in terms of how long it can fly is going to be pretty limited. Are you storing it because now it becomes heavy, so its flight can be limited? Or are you doing something else, right? The same thing comes in manufacturing, right? Do you look at every product and then say everything's good, or do you look for some defects and then catch the defects? So you can use AI in all three cases with a concept called anomaly detection, right? And so all it is saying, hey, look, I've trained you to see everything that's perfectly fine, but when there's an anomaly, alert me, and we can do something about it, right? So there's lots of applications through anomaly detection, as an example, which are in the manufacturing field, which are in the which are in the drone space, lots of areas. Anomaly detection is a really cool concept for AI.
Absolutely, and so at last count, most recently, I think that the count was over 197 companies focused on hardware and AI, machine learning, accelerated compute. In such a crowded space, What sets Untether apart, and how do you intend on leveraging the differentiation in a very crowded market?
So let's start by looking at, is the market overcrowded? Because you kind of want to look at that first, right? And let's answer that question. So the semiconductor market is what, 50 plus years old now?
Yeah.
$600 billion a year in revenue. And I think there's only one company that has just over 10% market share, and that was Intel. So the semi market is a highly fragmented market, and it already has, hundreds, if not thousands, of companies that are in that market. So big, and why is that? It's because the usage model of all the chips are so different and so vast that there's no single company that can say, I can have everything covered.
Right.
Right. Now, if you then move that to AI, okay, the expectation is AI is going to be pervasive. It's not going to be some subset of the semi market that's only AI. It's going to be across every chip that's out there. At some point, every sensor is going to have some AI built into it. Right. So all the way through, you're going to see AI deployed across many, 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 many areas. So I'm not surprised. I'm actually thrilled to see the number of AI chip companies, because that means it's real.
Yeah.
Right. If there were only 5 or 10 AI chip companies, it meant that the proliferation is still going to be a suspect. In terms of, will it actually happen? So I just want to start with that, because a lot of people talk about, okay, 193 companies, not many will survive, only 2 or 3 will survive. Okay, I agree with 193 companies. Maybe that's high, maybe that's low. I don't know yet. Not many will survive. I absolutely agree with, but I'll say that of any chip company in the world today. It's not just AI startups. And then the third question, which is really the important question, is, okay, great. In this field, with existing companies and new companies, what sets Untether apart? Right. And the real place where, when we talk to customers, why do they continue talking to us versus going off to NVIDIA, right, and buying NVIDIA's GPUs? They talk to us for really 2 reasons. One is it's the throughput that they are looking for. And then 2 is the latency, or the absolute low latency. Because we put memory and processing right next to each other, our ability to do AI workloads faster than anybody else is just a given. That's just, it's part of what we do. So those are the 2 main reasons why customers really gravitate to us. I'll give you a couple of examples. There's this one customer that looked at us, and they were looking at another company, company that does GPUs, let's just say, and they were looking at this, going, okay, what I want to do is I'm doing some type of signal intelligence, looking at radar, and I'm going to pull together, these various subcomponents of the frequency, and then I want to run against, my AI workload, CNN engine or a DNN engine against it. In the GPU, the power on that was such that the customer basically said, I'm walking away. In fact, I'm not even going to do AI, because I don't see anybody that's capable of giving me the throughput that I need within the power profile that I can give them. And luckily we had a chance to talk to them, and we walked through what we could do. And essentially the answer was, oh, wow, okay, now I can actually go in and create a product that I was going to walk away from, because there was not going to be a solution for it. Right, so that's one example. And there was another example where a customer had a dozen different types of video. The video was coming in from multiple cameras, whatever the number of cameras is, but they wanted to run a dozen different networks on it. So let's say it's a video coming in, you want to do an object detection, so that's one type of network. And then you do a different type of classification, and now you do a segmentation, and you do something else with it, and you want to separate them all out to be different networks, and then run them all one by one on the video stream. What they found from the competition, and we already established who the competition was, is that for each of those streams, they ended up having to need a different chip. So now they're looking at a dozen chips on a form factor that they just couldn't really expand upon. And so all of that we could do in one chip.
Wow.
All right. So those are the types of use cases, and those are more the corner edge use cases. But there's a lot of others where, they are deploying it. They got 100 watts that they could give. They get a certain number of frames per second, queries per second from the competition. And then they ask us, okay, what can you do? And we show them that we could do 8x or 10x that. And they go, okay, we're done. Let's go.
Well, that's impressive. And I do want to go back and thank you for your graciousness in answering it. One of the things you answered in the beginning is one of my fundamental and core beliefs too, is it may be a crowded market, but it's not overcrowded. And there's going to be a lot of different winners in this space because AI and machine learning will be everywhere. And so we can't take a singular view that one company is going to be successful and all the others are going to fail. And I don't even think it will be a handful or two handfuls. I think that there will be, no less than 25 to 30 that are massively successful. And with the competition, we'll continue to breed better engineering breakthroughs. So thank you for sharing that as well, Arun. Shifting gears a little bit. Building a company involves identifying talented contributors who can make an immediate impact and demonstrate a potential to grow over time. And what qualities and vectors of potential growth do you look for in engineers, and how do you identify those?
Yeah, so there are 5 traits that I always go through with any incoming person. By the way, I interview everybody that joins the company because I want to find out the fit, right? The fit is a key component of someone coming into the organization. And so I asked them about, how they work with ownership, right? In the area that we asked them to come in, they own what they do, all right? Are they a motivated self-starter, or are they just waiting around for someone to tell them what to do, right? How do they deal with accountability? Accountability is, okay, for the area of my ownership, I'm responsible for the success of it. Or are they more in the, well, I did my part. It was the guy next to me that didn't do their part. Because in a startup, you kind of have to have that type of connected whole versus separated whole, right? The third thing I look for is a sense of urgency. We were always, what's the definition of a startup? I mean, the silly definition I give people is a startup is a company that loses money every day. So what does that mean? That means that if you have a delay by a day, that means you cost us a day's worth of spend, right? Because we're not bringing in product, right? So the longer we delay the product coming in, the more we're going to burn money, right? And the more time we'll stay as a startup. So that sense of urgency is extremely important. And the fourth is teamwork. Teamwork, I kind of look at it in 2 different angles. One is, can you work with the people that you're going to be part of the team? And that's pretty normal, right? But then the second is what I say is a mindset of teamwork, which is, are you actually actively seeking out teams to solve problems versus saying, I'll just do it on my own and then come do the big reveal? Because guess what? If you do the big reveal, you're going to have a difficult time convincing others to follow the path that you want to go with them. And that goes back to the sense of urgency. You're going to cost us time, right?
Yeah.
And the last one is transparency. And transparency is something that I've taken it to the next level, if you will, in this company. We basically, with the COVID coming in, we did a lot of work through COVID, just like many other companies. We taped out during COVID. One of the things we needed to do was make sure that people that were working remotely were able to trust each other. And trust comes mainly through transparency, right? Because if you believe that I don't have a hidden agenda, then you know that whatever I say is what I'm saying, versus, okay, let me read between the lines and let me think through what you might be thinking, right? So we do a lot of things with respect to transparency within the organization, all the way through, for example, I share, with the company every week what's going on, all the way through. Every employee knows how much money we have in the bank, right? It's not a surprise to them on, where I am with any customer conversation. where we are with any product discussion, et cetera. So those are the types of things that I look for when we do interviews, to make sure that we can bring the right people in that can fit across these criteria. And from an engineer's perspective, you kind of want to look for the curiosity angle. Is the
Hmm.
engineer curious, right, in terms of what they're looking to do, and are they asking questions, and asking questions for meaning versus asking questions for the sake of? So yeah, those are the types of things we try to look into to make sure that we get the right quality of people coming in, and someone that wants to come in and actually help leave a legacy behind is kind of an interesting approach as well, where when you do something innovative and different, then you are creating and trailblazing differently than anybody else.
Absolutely. Well, and as you prepare to take Untether to the next phase of growth, what key concerns are on your mind regarding team expansion, and how do you plan on addressing those?
Well, so startups always have the challenge of, okay, you have so much money you raised. And so within the money you raise, you have a plan for growing the team. And then at some point, you're going to have to go raise more money, right? So that's always been and always will be a CEO's primary responsibility, to make sure that the company stays funded adequately. And so that's the first thing. And then you get into the next level of conversation, and that is, for an AI chip company to be successful, your software team needs to be much larger than your hardware team.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, you end up with software being a few layers. You end up with software at the chip level, right? You call them firmware, runtime, whatever the case may be. And then you have at the development kit level, and then you have software actually at the model level, right? Which is a different, like the large language model or Resident 50 model, that type of model level. And so building that and having the right skills to come into that, is a challenging aspect. We do something called, because we have a large number of processing elements on our chip, we have a spatial architecture. And most architectures are sequential. Sequential means cycle count. You do one, then you do the next thing, you do the third thing, you do the fourth thing, right? So that's the cycle count based approach. A spatial approach is, okay, I can do these 10 things or 20 things or 300 things, so it doesn't matter how many, in parallel. All of them are happening at the same time. It's a really powerful engine, but it's a very complex engine for the software people, because now they have to, internal software people. From a customer perspective, not so much, but for our internal people, they have to make it easy enough so that the customers can do a push button type of an approach. And so getting that level of skill set of people that can think spatially, where a lot of the software engineers are thinking more sequentially, that's been their training. That's always interesting, and that's been a challenge to get the right skill set of people there. And then companies like ours also have to go beyond the chip, right, and the software, and start thinking about system level,
Hmm.
which is, when we deploy this, how does this work as a system, and what the interaction is going to be. And so growing that, you can't bring in a lot of system engineers up front, but you kind of have to, as and when you start opening up those particular applications. And
Right.
so there is a little bit of push-pull perspective on, okay, which comes first? Do I get the system engineer first? Do I get the customer first? Right? And so, or the market first, I should say. And so there's a little bit of push-pull that companies have to struggle their way through. But we are continuing on that path as well.
Awesome. And so you've talked a lot about why customers may want to choose you. I've got a little bit of a differentiated question. So as an investor, I have no shortage of AI machine learning companies that are seeking my investment. Why would an investor want to invest in Untether at this point?
A few reasons, right? The whole concept of AI deployment, you cannot do it with the traditional technology.
Yeah.
And there has to be an alternative. Or will it go back to the problem we stated, which is, okay, it's going to be dividing the haves versus the have-nots. So that's going to be a key component. The second component is more and more AI is going to be real time, which means latency is a big deal. And so customers will be looking for the lowest latency solution. Think of anomaly detection. Telling you, let's say you're the machine operator in an assembly system. If I told you about the anomaly, maybe 4 seconds after it happened, the product's already boxed up and ready to go, right? And so latency is a big deal. Now, I'm exaggerating because obviously any company that says 4 second latency shouldn't be in existence. But but what you'll end up doing is, as an operator or as a factory owner, is you want to run this across multiplicity of high-speed assembly lines, not just one assembly line per system, right? So that's going to be another type of use case where the whole concept of latency becomes real-time component becomes very important. And then the third is, you kind of want to pick companies that have a differentiation that can last. If all you're doing, if you're choosing another company that's doing a GPU, okay, well, that's a tough one. Okay, so maybe you wouldn't choose that at all. But if you're choosing a company that's doing a CPU-like approach, then you know that there's going to be a problem with its scalability, either up or down.
Yeah.
Or if you're choosing a company that does an SoC, ASSP, right? So like hey, I'm targeting a chip that's going to do robots, right? AI and robots, or AI and industrial. Then for you to do another chip, it's going to cost you a lot more money again. You got to raise more money for that one, and you got to raise another equivalent amount for a third chip. Right, and so the scalability, which we talked about earlier, is going to be a hindrance for such a company. Whereas for us, the scalability is just an incremental mass cost in terms of doing the next product and the next product after that.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. And shifting gears once again, if you were talking to an engineer who doesn't need a job, but is curious, why would somebody who is gainfully, happily employed elsewhere, why should they consider coming to work for Untether?
So there's from people coming into the company, right? You kind of want a fit component. We talked about the fit and how that happens, and so that's a key component for both parties to understand. Now, why would someone want to join us? If I go back and look through, and think through all the people who've joined us for different reasons, it comes down to a few things. Engineers like doing, solving difficult problems, and we have some really nice ways of solving those difficult problems. Engineers love doing work that is not throwaway work, right? Because when you experiment, you kind of end up having to do a lot of throwaway work. Now, it's okay if you're a research team because that's what you're used to. But if you're a development engineer, you'd hate having your work thrown away because you put a lot of effort for it, right? So that's the key component where we have a pretty clear plan of at-memory compute architecture, and we know how that's going to proliferate going forward. So the work that we do can get reused again in the future, right? And so engineers' work can last. And then the third is, can you come and work with other smart people? And we have a ton of really, really intelligent people that by virtue of us doing something that's never been done before, you kind of attract those type of people, and they in turn attract similar people. So you end up getting this really good virtuous cycle of learning and doing and learning and doing that really appreciate a lot of our engineers that have joined us appreciate.
Absolutely. And kind of as an aside, taking on one of the things you said earlier too, I really respect the fact that you're looking at bringing in, new college grads and younger engineers too, because one of the advantages is that this isn't a mature field. So nobody really has it all figured out yet. So
right.
I'd like to close the conversation with both a compliment and a question. Your proactive engagement with customers and your ability to build strong partnerships are well recognized in the industry. and go back as far as your days back to Altera. Could you share like one or two key lessons you've gained from your experience in this area?
A customer at the other end is a person just like you and me. And they have their own reasons for doing things. They have their own rationale for doing things. They're not stupid. They make wise choices for themselves. And so when someone says, I don't want to use you because I'm going to stay with what I have, it's very important to understand the reasoning behind, okay, what set of circumstances led the customer to that point? And being able to understand, okay, is that set of circumstances strong even today, or is it changing? And what is this person thinking with respect to responding to that set of circumstances? Because I used to get a lot of things from various people I worked with, which was, oh, okay, that customer is a bigot, and so they're not going to look at us, or this customer is really not thinking about it, and so what, we can give them, charge them whatever we want. And so the response is not necessarily about, it's the whole concept of how would you like to be treated? Okay, that's the same way you want to treat them, right? So that to me was one of the key tenets of what I learned from my early days that stuck with me all the way through, because I apply that to pretty much everything, including our employees, right? It's however I like to be treated is how I like to treat employees. So that's a key component of making sure that relationships are sustainable and longer lasting versus transactional.
Got it. Well, Arun, tons of insight, and you've been incredibly gracious with your time. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Justin. This has been very fun, talking to you.
Absolutely. If somebody wants to get in contact with you, whether it be about investing in the company, about potentially partnering with you as a customer, or even learning more about coming to work for you, how would you like for people to get in touch with you?
They can always, send me an email, arun@untether.ai. They can send to info@untether.ai. Any one of those will always be able to respond back.
Awesome. Well, much appreciated. Again, thank you for the time, and look forward to speaking again soon. Thanks again.
Thanks, Justin.